You're driving home. Same road as always. Red light. Your eyes drop to your phone for 2 seconds. You don't remember the last 3 turns at all. Your brain drove them for you. But somewhere else right now, a different kind of driver is doing something almost impossible to believe. He's traveling at 200 miles an hour. And he is not looking at the danger directly in front of him. He's looking past it, long before it arrives. That's the part nobody tells you. That's the real answer, and it's far stranger than it sounds. Every single lap, a Formula One driver does something your eyes never learned how to do. They stop looking at the corner. They look through it, to the exit, to the point where the car will be 3 seconds from now. Not where it is, where it's going. Your eyes right now are wired for something else entirely. They chase movement. They snap toward whatever looks urgent. A flashing light, a sudden no ice. A car swerving 2 lanes over. This is called foveal capture, and it kept your ancestors alive for a very long time. But at 200 miles an hour, that same instinct will kill you. In the 1990s, a sports scientist named Joan Vickers started filming where elite athletes actually pointed their eyes in the split seconds before a critical moment. Basketball players before a free throw, surgeons before an incision, golfers before a putt. She found something nobody expected. The best performers weren't scanning more, they were scanning less. Their gaze locked onto one precise point, held perfectly still, for a fraction of a second longer than everyone else's. She called it the quiet eye, and the longer that fixation lasted before the action began, the better the outcome almost always was. Now put a driver in a car doing 320 kilometers an hour toward a wall of concrete and painted curbing. There is no time for a wandering gaze, none. A driver who looks at the wall tends to steer toward the wall. This isn't superstition, it's a documented phenomenon called target fixation, and it shows up everywhere from motorcycle racing to fighter pilot training. Where your eyes go, your hands tend to follow. So the fastest drivers on the planet had to train themselves out of the one instinct every other human relies on for survival. Every circuit on the calendar is covered in tiny reference points that most fans never register. A painted line on a curb, a gap in the crowd fencing, a shadow cast by a grandstand at a certain time of day. Drivers memorize hundreds of these markers per lap, using them as fixed anchors for exactly when to brake, when to turn in, when to get back on the throttle. At somewhere like Eau Rouge and Rédillon at Spa, the car is compressing under several times the force of gravity while climbing a blind hill, and the driver's eyes are already locked onto a point they cannot yet see over the crest. They're driving from memory as much as from vision. The track becomes less a road and more a rehearsed piece of choreography, replayed at a speed where conscious thought would simply arrive too late to matter. Instead, they fix their eyes on the apex before they've even turned the wheel. Then, before they've even reached the apex, their eyes have already moved again, out to the exit point, the vanishing point of the corner, sometimes 100 meters further down the track than where the car currently sits. Their hands are still finishing one action, while their eyes have already committed to the next. Have you ever wondered why some drivers look almost bored in the cockpit during a ferocious overtake? This is why. Panic lives in the eyes first. Theirs have already left the danger behind. Here's where it gets stranger still. Neuroscientist David Eagleman spent years studying how the brain experiences time under extreme stress. The kind you feel in a car crash, a fall, a moment of real danger. People consistently report that time slowed down. Eagleman's research suggests it isn't that time actually slows. It's that the brain, flooded with adrenaline, starts laying down memories at a much higher density. More frames per second, in a sense. Afterward, when you replay the memory, it feels like it lasted longer, because there's simply more of it recorded. A driver at 200 miles an hour is living inside this effect on every single lap. Not once. Every lap, for an hour and a half. Their nervous system has learned to function inside what should be a once-in-a-lifetime adrenaline spike, treating it as a Tuesday afternoon at the office. That takes years to build. It isn't natural talent alone. Decision researcher Gary Klein spent decades studying how firefighters, paramedics, and military commanders make split-second calls under pressure, and he found the same pattern again and again. Experts don't calmly weigh 5 options and pick the best one. There isn't time for that. Instead, their brain pattern matches the situation against thousands of similar moments they've lived through before, and produces one option, almost instantly, that simply feels right. Klein called this recognition-primed decision-making. It's not guessing. It's pattern recognition running so fast it feels like instinct. A Formula One driver has effectively lived through millions of corners by the time they reach the grid. Karting from the age of 4 or 5. Simulators for hours every single day. Real laps, sim laps, replayed laps, studied telemetry, corner after corner after corner, until the brain has built a library so deep that a decision which should take conscious thought instead arrives already finished. The eyes lock onto the exit. The hands already know the answer. The conscious mind is almost a passenger, riding along a fraction of a second behind its own body. Even the pit stop, the 2-second miracle you see between racing laps, runs on this same principle. 20 mechanics, each responsible for a single task, each one trained to react to a visual cue rather than think through a sequence. Nobody in that crew is solving a problem in real time. They're executing a pattern they've rehearsed thousands of times in a garage until the actual event on race day feels almost slower than the practice. Speed, at the very highest level, is never really about moving fast. It's about removing the need to think while you do it. So here's the twist. You'd think more speed would demand more focus, more raw attention thrown at the problem. The opposite is true. The faster the car goes, the less a driver can afford to actually look at. Attention is not a spotlight you can point everywhere at once. It's a needle. And the drivers who win are the ones who have trained that needle to point at exactly one thing, at exactly the right moment, again and again and again, thousands of times a race, without ever once letting it drift toward the thing that's trying to kill them. This is why the same driver can look completely serene through a corner that puts a spectator's heart in their throat, and then, minutes later, misjudge something as simple as a slowing car in traffic during a safety car period. The eyes are trained for one very specific kind of danger, the kind that arrives at speed, in a rhythm they've rehearsed 10,000 times. Take that rhythm away, slow everything down, remove the pattern, and the advantage briefly disappears. The skill was never about being fearless. It was about knowing exactly where to look, and only working at full strength, inside the exact conditions it was built for. Think about what that actually asks of a human nervous system. To stare directly at the exit of a corner, while a wall blurs past at the very edge of your vision, close enough to end everything, and to simply not look at it. Every instinct you have was built by evolution to do the opposite. Fear was designed to grab your eyes and hold them on the threat. A driver has to overrule that, corner after corner, for the length of an entire race, while their heart rate sits around 170 beats a minute and their body is drenched in exactly the same stress chemicals as someone running from a predator. And here's the mirror, the part that brings it back to you. You do a smaller version of this every single day, and you've probably never noticed. When you're deep in a difficult conversation, and you feel a flash of anger rising, where do your eyes go? Do they lock onto the other person's face, waiting to react to whatever they say next? Or do they drift toward the door, toward the exit, toward where this conversation is actually going to end up? When you're overwhelmed at your desk with 6 things demanding your attention at once, is your focus scattered across all 6, achieving none of them properly? Or have you learned, the way a driver has to learn, to lock onto exactly one thing at a time and let the rest blur past at the edges? This is the actual skill hiding underneath what looks like raw courage. It isn't that these drivers feel less fear than you do. Their heart rate data proves they don't. It's that somewhere in years of repetition, their eyes learn to stop chasing the danger and start chasing the outcome instead. Vickers would call it quiet eye. Klein would call it recognition primed decision making. You might just call it staying calm under pressure. But it is a trained skill, not a personality trait. And that means it is at least partly learnable by anyone willing to put in the repetition. Think about the last time you merged onto a fast-moving motorway in heavy traffic. Your eyes probably darted, mirror, blind spot, the car ahead, braking, the gap closing, all of it at once. Your attention splitting into pieces until none of the pieces got your full focus. A driver trained in the quiet eye method would have picked the gap first, held their eyes there, and let their hands catch up. Same road, same speed, relatively. Completely different use of the one resource that actually decides the outcome, which is where you choose to look. So, next time you watch a car thread a gap that shouldn't exist at 200 miles an hour, don't just watch the car, watch the driver's head tilted almost imperceptibly toward a point down the track that hasn't happened yet. That's the real skill. Not the courage to go fast. The discipline to look somewhere other than where you're afraid. And the next time you feel your own eyes locking onto the thing that scares you, the inbox, the hard conversation, the mistake you can't stop replaying. Remember, there's a driver somewhere doing 200 miles an hour who solved this exact problem by refusing to look at it at all. You notice something today that you've watched 100 times before and never actually seen. That's the strangest part of all.